Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. With the Indian economy being in a slowdown mode since many years and growth having fallen in India year after year, one of the casualties of not having growth in the country has been job growth. New jobs are not being created, and that has given rise to massive joblessness in India. Our economy never did recover from the disastrous demonetization of 2016, and thus job growth in the country has not come back, it has not recovered. A back of the envelope calculation shows that as against the need for 20 million new jobs each year in order to absorb India's teeming millions, as against 20 million, just about 1.5 million new jobs are being created every year in the country. Our graduates relentlessly search for jobs after they pass out, and with many of them remaining unemployed for several years after they pass out. A large number of these graduates need to be retrained and reskilled today in order to make them employable. It is a tough scene with each factor that creates jobs in the virtuous cycle of growth, which is fresh investments and consumer spending, both being at all-time lows, and thus jobs not coming by. A recent report in the business line says that while the services PMI improved just about marginally in February 2022, however, job shedding continued in the Indian economy despite this improvement, and jobs in the services sector have receded for the third consecutive month and at the fastest rate since July 21. The latest PMI data has revealed that even though business has improved, the job situation has still not improved in India. Forget adding new jobs. Companies actually reduced their headcount in February 2022 due to the relatively weak growth of new business and a lack of pressure on them on capacity utilization because demand has remained low. So what has been the unemployment position in the country? The Indian economy has been experiencing rising and untamed joblessness since very long. As recent as in December 2021 and before the Omicron wave set in, the CMI reported that the urban jobless rate in India had spiked to double digits to touch 10.7%, pushing the overall unemployment rate in India to 8.5%. The rural jobless rate also touched a 9-week high of 7.42% at that time, and it has only gone up thereafter. The CMI says that the high unemployment shows the rising demand for jobs and the inability of the economy to create jobs in adequate numbers. Despite the recovery and significantly improved fortunes of the big corporates, the joblessness, the unemployment continues to remain high in India, showing some kind of a jobless recovery in our economy. So what does our Prime Minister have to say about it? While the sheer lack of jobs and livelihood is there to see, the twist given to it at the political level indicates to us a state of denial of this crisis in the ruling party. That to us is clearly evident in a recent interview of the Prime Minister reported by the Hindustan Times, where the PM was asked about his views in response to the opposition raising the issue of unemployment in the recently concluded state elections. The Prime Minister said that when it comes to job creation, we must look at the issue in its entirety, and he thus states some facts in order to counter this allegation about jobs not being there. And to us, these facts show that job creation is taking place. What is the first thing that Modi says? He says that in the last 7 years, 24,000 kilometers of rail routes have been electrified in India. The railways set the record for the highest ever electrification, by which he implies that the build-up of jobs is taking place in this sector. He then says that earlier, only 5 cities in India had metro rail. He now says that 18 cities have it, and work is going on metro rail in many more cities in order to set up such a rail link, and that also provides jobs. The third data he says is that thousands of kilometers of highways have been constructed at the fastest rate in the world, which means jobs are being provided. He then says that LPG coverage has increased from 55% to 95% in India, which has led to the creation of jobs because it means a large distribution network and expansion of agencies for it. He further says that rural electrification has taken place at a record pace and 95% villages in the country have been electrified, which has led to the creation of jobs before and after electrification. The Prime Minister further says that there are many things when it comes to the creation of jobs at the grassroots level. There are more than 70 lakh self-help groups across the country, which is 3 times more than what it was 6 to 7 years ago, and they are creating jobs too. He then says that about 33 crore mudra loans have been given, which not only ensures economic empowerment but also creates more jobs. Khadi and village industries have made record sales and turnover over these years, which would not have been possible if jobs had not been created. The Prime Minister finally says that when a record level of work is being done in every sector and not just one, will it happen without employment generation, he asks. Today, work is being done in India 3 to 4 times faster than before, he says. When the speed of the work increases, more workers are also needed. And doesn't it ensure employment, he asks. That was the Prime Minister's response. The Prime Minister's response to India's rising and stubborn unemployment, on the face of it, is impressive. The consummate politician that after all he is. He smartly talks of the macros and conveniently bypasses the micros. But while the macros may look strong and healthy on the face of it, the micros that they hide, which is where the reality is, are very weak and suffering. The macros may look strong, as we say, the micros are not, and that's where the reality is. The fact is that the government's capex in infra projects, which the Prime Minister talks about, whether it be railways, whether it be metro rail, highways, electrification, etc., all those projects have largely benefited the big corporates of the country, with little growth trickling down to the MSME sector, which is India's biggest job generator and which contributes to about 55% of India's GDP. This is reflected in our K-shaped recovery, where a handful of big companies have benefited and recovered, but the predominant and large MSME sector continues to languish, it continues to suffer, it has been downsizing and also closing down. And the government may have distributed mudra loans, but these micro loans have only helped the small and unorganized entrepreneurs to survive after the twin hit of demonetization and the hurried GST. And these mudra loans have not added to the growth of these businesses and the buildup of jobs, which explains the massive mudra loan defaults in the country, which are yet to be recognized by the banking sector because of the soft NPA recognition norms which have been permitted by the Reserve Bank of India. Thus, to us, even mudra loans have not added to jobs in the country. It has only been a survival mechanism for the unorganized sector. So what are the ground realities that we talk about and which we say that the Prime Minister has ignored in his response? The Prime Minister's response to unemployment is good logic to us, but it is more like a helicopter view where one cannot see the ground realities. What he speaks of is the macros as seen from the air, and what he does not speak of is the micros which are not seen in a helicopter view. And what are the ground realities? What are the micros in this regard which he is missing out? The first one, the government's infrastructure capex has failed to tame the unemployment crisis, and we are seeing elevated joblessness in the rural areas as well as in the urban sectors. This is evident from the CMI data from time to time, as also from the fact that whenever any improvement in job numbers is reported in a particular month or in a particular quarter, it proves to be short-lived and soon loses steam in the very next month or in the very next quarter itself. The second reality, the labor participation rate has fallen in India, indicating that the joblessness is chronic and that the frustrated and desperate unemployed are preferring to be self-employed rather than try for the elusive jobs which are just not there. The third, the MSME sector, which is India's biggest job creator, remains crisis-ridden and has been unable to generate new jobs because of its own crisis. The fourth, with consumers unwilling to spend, capacity utilization in industries remains at an average lowly of about 65 to 70%, because of which corporates are unwilling to risk their capital in fresh investments and capacity build-up, which results in fresh jobs. If investments are not coming by, where will the new jobs also come by? Further, it has been a K-shaped recovery so far in the Indian economy, which means that while one sector of the economy is showing growth, the other, which is the MSME sector, is not. It is proof of the fact that all the potential growth because of the government capex on projects that Mr. Modi speaks about has not materialized as far as the MSME sector is concerned, and so is the case of jobs therein. There are several other indicators which say that all is not good at the ground level as far as jobs in the country are concerned. And what are they? They are the receding and depleted household incomes for want of jobs and livelihood in India. It is the low consumer confidence. It is the low household confidence about its perceived income in the coming year. It is a massive underemployment, and it is a skittish and uncertain growth with quarter-to-quarter ups and downs in the sequential data and performance of the Indian economy. To us, in aggregate, they all show that the unemployment situation in the country continues to be worrying. The larger picture is that the government is ramping up its infrastructure spending as its own fiscal support to a slowing and stressed economy. But with the government not the most efficient spender of public money and collateral policy support missing to stabilize growth in India, the government spending is not resulting in the build-up of jobs, as Mr. Modi claims. Let all these projects continue, since they are needed in order to trigger growth. They are also needed in order to make up for the infrastructure deficit in the country. But with all these projects going on, with the government increasing its capex spending in the country, the government also needs to do many other things. It needs to make laws simpler and easier to comply with. It needs to reduce the cost of compliance. It needs to improve India's real ease of doing business in the country. It needs to reduce the burden of an onerous GST law. It needs to protect the interests of the small sector in bankruptcy cases and provide timely credit to viable entities. It needs to do all this in order to ensure that growth comes back in the country and jobs are created not just by the big corporates, but also by the smaller entities who are the bigger creator of jobs in the country. And to us, that is the reason why jobs are not there. And that is the reason why, despite Mr. Modi saying that the government has been indulging in large capex, we are not seeing the employment scenario improve. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.